You know that feeling, right? When you've put in a solid day's work and evening finally rolls around, it's supposed to be your time to unwind and do the things you actually want to do. But so often it just doesn't quite turn out that way.
No, it really doesn't.
It ends up being this mishmash of catching up on chores, maybe scrolling endlessly through social media, and there's that nagging feeling that we're not really spending our time on what truly matters.
Yeah, it's that universal experience, isn't it? Like we all crave those evenings that genuinely recharge us and leave us feeling fulfilled, but somehow they often just slip away.
Right. So for this deep dive, we really wanted to dig into this challenge.
Mm.
And we've gone through a whole bunch of fascinating material, some really deep reflections on our relationship with time itself, some really practical productivity hacks, and even some insights into how our attention works and why it's so easily hijacked.
Yeah, and the goal here is really simple. It's to pull out the most actionable strategies from all of this research. Concrete things that you can actually start doing tonight to transform your evenings from just kind of drifting along to really making them intentional and rewarding.
Okay, so let's jump right in because I think the very first thing that struck me from all of these sources was this almost universal feeling of being up against the clock, like we're constantly running out of time. And 4,000 weeks puts it pretty bluntly, right? That's about the average lifespan we get, so it's finite.
Yeah, it's a sobering thought, isn't it? We have this limited amount of time, and yet we're constantly bombarded with messages to do more, be more, achieve more. It's no wonder we feel this pressure.
Right, and what's interesting is that our modern obsession with productivity might actually be making this feeling worse.
Yeah, how so?
Well, the more efficient we become at packing things into our day, the more it can feel like we're just speeding up this conveyor belt of never-ending tasks.
Oh, I see what you mean. It's like we get better at clearing the decks, but then more stuff just piles up right back up again.
Yeah. Exactly, and 4,000 weeks actually highlights how our perception of time has changed so dramatically compared to earlier eras. Imagine a medieval farmer. Their day wasn't dictated by a clock or a schedule. It was shaped by the tasks at hand, like tending to the animals, planting crops.
It's so true. It was a much more organic way of life, wasn't it? The work itself dictated the rhythm of the day, not some abstract timeline.
Right, and that's a huge shift from where we are now. We're constantly trying to fit ourselves into these predetermined boxes of minutes and hours.
And that leads to what 4,000 Weeks calls existential overwhelm. Right, that feeling that there are just too many meaningful things we could be doing and not enough time to do them all.
It's the worst.
It is a real struggle for a lot of people.
So if we can't magically create more hours in the day, what do? Well, the sources seem to agree that a crucial first step is shifting our focus away from simply trying to do more and instead focusing on the quality of our evenings.
I love that. I think that's so key because that whole idea that we can make time for everything, it's a bit of a myth, isn't it?
It really is. And 4,000 Weeks is pretty clear about that. It's all about embracing our limitations and making conscious choices about what truly matters to us.
Manage your day-to-day. Echoes this as well, emphasizing how easily we get bogged down in these urgent but often unimportant tasks, like that endless stream of emails.
Oh my gosh, yes. I loved that example in 4,000 Weeks about, prioritizing a heartfelt message from a friend over, that please read email about changing your password again. It's so true, though, isn't it? We often let the trivial stuff drown out the truly significant.
Yeah, and I think that's a great question for our listeners to reflect on.
Right.
What are those seemingly urgent but ultimately unimportant tasks that tend to steal your focus in the evenings? Is it clearing out your inbox, responding to every single message or notification? What are you pushing aside as a result?
Right. And thinking about that shift from quantity to quality, one of the most practical and actionable ideas I came across was in that YouTube video we watched, remember the 15-minute runs?
Oh, yeah. That was brilliant. They were talking about tackling tasks like cleaning or organizing in these short, focused bursts.
And what I loved about that approach is that it really resonated with the wisdom from Manager Day to Day, where Anthony Trollope said that a small daily task, if it be really daily and continuous, will beat the labors of a spasmodic Hercules.
It's so true. It's all about consistency, those small, consistent efforts that really add up over time.
Absolutely. And the YouTube presenter even suggested setting a timer or putting on a short playlist for those 15-minute blocks, which I thought was a great way to add a little bit of structure and energy to it. Then Manager Day to Day really emphasized prioritizing what they call great work, those most meaningful and creative tasks during our peak energy times. And for some of us, that might actually be in the early evening, once we've kind of shaken off the workday fatigue.
That's a good point. Yeah, and the key takeaway there is to really guard those peak energy periods, to avoid scheduling meetings or doing those mindless administrative tasks during those times.
Exactly. Protect that precious evening energy for the work that truly matters to you, whether that's writing or working on a side project or even just thinking strategically about your career.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, another super practical tip, and this one directly impacts how much of our evenings we actually get to ourselves, is the idea of strategically saying no at work. Remember that anecdote from the YouTube video about the CIA agent?
Oh, yeah.
You know what I found so fascinating about that story was how they reframed saying no, not as this negative refusal, but as a smart and strategic decision. You know that phrase they suggested, let me look at my current list of priorities and get back to you with a realistic timeline. It's so effective.
It is because it buys you time to assess the request, and it also subtly communicates that you value your time and you're not just saying yes to everything that comes your way.
Right, and it's about being strategic, not selfish, which I think is a really important distinction.
Totally, because by protecting your evenings from those non-essential work demands, you're actually ensuring that you can be fully present and effective during your actual work hours.
Yeah, you're setting boundaries, which is so crucial for maintaining that work-life balance. Okay, so we've talked about time management and prioritizing our energy. Now let's talk about another major drain on our precious evening time, our digital devices.
Oh, yes, the black hole of our phones and computers.
Exactly. Both 4,000 Weeks and Manage Your Day-to-Day highlight how easily these distractions can just eat away at our focus and our free time. You know, the endless scrolling, the constant ping of notifications, it all pulls us away from what we actually intended to do.
And 4,000 Weeks even suggests this pretty radical but intriguing idea.
What's that?
Making our phones as unengaging as possible, by removing social media apps, even switching the display to grayscale, so it's less tempting to look at.
I like that idea. And it makes sense when you think about the psychology behind it, right? Even the mere presence of those potential distractions can drain our mental energy because we're constantly fighting the urge to check them. Manage Your Day-to-Day calls this conscious computing, being more aware of our posture, our breathing, and how our technology use is affecting us physically and mentally.
And they also recommend creating those intentional windows of non-stimulation in the evening.
Yes, so important.
Specific times where we step away from all screens to allow for focused thinking or just to properly unwind.
Right. It's about consciously choosing when and how we engage with technology instead of letting it dictate our every move.
Exactly. So thinking about reclaiming our evenings, it's not just about what we do. It's also about making sure we're getting enough rest and renewal.
Oh, absolutely. And the YouTube video we watched mentioned the idea of 7 types of rest.
Yeah.
Emphasizing that it goes way beyond just physical rest.
Right, because we can be physically still, even get enough sleep and still feel completely drained emotionally, mentally, even socially.
Exactly. We need different types of rest to truly recharge all aspects of ourselves. And Manage Your Day-to-Day really drives home the importance of sleep. They even say that it's more critical than food for our overall well-being.
Wow. Never thought about it like that.
It's powerful, isn't it?
Yeah.
So sacrificing sleep to squeeze in more work is almost always counterproductive in the long run.
Right, and both sources seem to suggest aligning our evening routines with our natural body rhythms, starting to wind down earlier, maybe creating a calming pre-sleep ritual.
Yeah, it's about listening to our bodies and giving them what they need to function at their best.
Okay, so moving beyond the realms of work and digital habits, 4,000 Weeks brings up this really important concept of cultivating hobbies and what they call atelic activities.
Atelic.
It means things we do purely for the enjoyment of doing them, completely separate from any goal of achievement or external productivity.
I love that. It's like reclaiming those activities for their own sake, just pure enjoyment.
And they use this charming example of Rod Stewart's elaborate model train hobby, as this illustration of how engaging in something, even if you're not particularly good at it, can be a fantastic stress reliever and a source of genuine joy.
Yeah, and it ties in beautifully with that idea of finding novelty in the mundane, right? Learning to appreciate those small, everyday pleasures without constantly chasing some grand accomplishment.
Which brings us to another really interesting concept from 4,000 Weeks, the practice of doing nothing.
Doing nothing. Now, that sounds intriguing, especially in our culture of busyness.
Right, but it's not about being lazy or unproductive. It's more like a form of meditation, this conscious resistance to our constant urge to be doing something, to be manipulating our experience. It's about allowing things to just be.
It sounds so simple, yet so challenging at the same time.
It is, and the book suggests starting with very short intervals, even just 5 or 10 minutes of just sitting and noticing when your mind starts to wander or plan or, do anything really, and then gently bringing it back to the present moment.
I love that. It's a way of reclaiming our autonomy, isn't it? Stepping back from that constant striving and just being present.
And finally, manage your day-to-day really advocates for carving out those pockets of unstructured time in our evenings. Time for spontaneous exploration, for quiet reflection, for just connecting with the present moment without any specific agenda.
I think that's so crucial because it's in those moments of unstructured time that our minds can really wander freely, make new connections, come up with fresh ideas.
Yeah, it's like the antidote to those overscheduled, overplanned evenings that leave us feeling drained rather than recharged.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
Yeah.
From those focused 15-minute bursts of activity to strategically saying no, to being more mindful with our technology, to prioritizing rest, nurturing those Attell-like hobbies, experimenting with doing nothing, and carving out unstructured time. What ties all of this together?
Well, I think it all comes back to that initial feeling of the evening time crunch and the realization that truly transforming our evenings isn't about cramming even more into them.
Right. It's not about doing more. It's about being more intentional.
Exactly. It's about recognizing our limitations and consciously prioritizing those activities that truly nourish and fulfill us.
And that's really the key takeaway here, isn't it? Shifting from a mindset of scarcity to a mindset of intention.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, remember, these are just ideas to experiment with, Pick one or two that resonate with you, try them out, see how they feel, and adjust as you go.
And as you do that, we want to leave you with a final thought-provoking question. What if letting go of that constant pressure to be productive every single evening actually leads to greater fulfillment and maybe even greater effectiveness in the long run? What might you discover about yourself and the true value of your time when you allow your evenings to be about something more, something richer, something more meaningful than simply getting things done?
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into reclaiming our evenings.
It's been a pleasure.
We'll see you next time.
See you then.